Many people believe that adding gloves at 1 defense are impossible, and in today's most recent standards, I would have to agree. But back in 2019, I was going through an old list of accounts that I had that were extremely inactive, and I found one with 10 HP, 1 defense, and 1 prayer. It was a 10 HP account that wanted to cannon Slayer tasks and get 150 quest points in order to block as many tasks as possible. Now there was a lot of new quests I had not yet done on this account, but there was also one quest I wouldn't have thought was even possible back then in my wildest dreams, and that is the Monkey Madness portion of Recipe for Disaster. So today, here is exactly how I went about getting Addy Gloves with only 1 defense, 10 hit points, and 1 prayer. But before we get into today's video, I wanted to shout out our sponsor, which is once again Opera GX. Opera GX is a wonderful web browser which I love using. One of the best perks of this browser is it has GX control, meaning I can limit my RAM, my CPU, and even my network bandwidth on this web browser. This allows me to have optimal performance across any game, including RuneScape, without destroying my frames per second or even taking up too much bandwidth like many web browsers do. You can only find these features in Opera GX, and it really is beneficial to turn these on and set your processor limit, your memory limit, and even your bandwidth limit to whatever you think is optimal for your PC. As well, this browser has built-in Discord and Twitch on the sidebar. I can see any Twitch user I'm following if they're live and just click their channel from that sidebar, go directly to their channel and watch them from there. You can even change the start page wallpaper, you can change the theme of the browser, you can do anything you want, and there's so many customizable areas of this browser, which is one of the reasons I love it. So I want you guys to check out this browser, please. It's really optimal, it's really easy to use, and it's just a wonderful web browser. Use the link in the description below, it's free, check it out, and thanks again to Opera GX for sponsoring today's video. Luckily, this account already had pretty much all the requirements for this quest, as it already had all of the old quests completed that it could, meaning Monkey Madness obviously was done. But of course, I had not accepted the training for Monkey Madness because that would have gotten me higher HP, defense, strength, everything I don't want on a very restricted build such as this. And I know that's why many of you are watching, because you're just wondering, how the hell did this guy avoid Monkey Madness training? And we'll get into that soon. But the very first thing I was missing besides the training for the prereqs for the Recipe for Disaster portion was, of course, 70 cooking. This account didn't have 70 cooking. So I bought some wines, and guess what? I got 70 cooking, actually 65. Plus Chef's Delight Matured, of course, because I'm not going to get 70 cooking. Who actually does that?
Chef Bra.
So the next requirement for this quest was to actually go and get all the monkey gree-grees that I was missing. And that's because you need all 4 to complete this portion of the RFD quest. So I would have to get back to the island to even get the bones for these gree-grees. And here is where I answer the underlying question you're all asking: how did I get back to the island without accepting the reward while staying 10 HP, 1 prayer, and 1 defense? Well, did you see this game update recently where they disabled all the scrying pools and scry features of portal nexuses inside of player-owned houses? Yeah, my bad. What I mention next might be part of the reason why they've disabled this scrying feature so recently. So in the least amount of words, how I would get back to Ape Atoll on a limited account such as this is that I would scry and interface walk into a new set of coordinates in that same area I was scrying in. What? Now, normally you can't move while you're interfaced, and when you go in a scrying pool, you actually are interfaced, and therefore you cannot move. If you try to click off the ground, it will just send you back to the player-owned house. But with an interface walk, for an example such as this one I used back in 2019 and early 2020, you could stay entirely interfaced, but also move at the same time.
Chest bra.
This was done by actually interfacing, then right-click reporting a player and interfacing once again. This report player action would allow you to re-interface between the report and the next interface, and then go to your targeted location inside of the scry, all while still staying interfaced during the whole entire session. And as long as you were able to move out of the original coordinates of the scry, you could then go into that area and walk freely. Now, the only reason you could not do this on the original coordinates of the scry is because that is how the scry checked to return force teleport you back into the player-owned house. So if you didn't move, you would go back to the house. If you moved coordinates, you would stay in the new coordinates you located to. Now, the weird thing about this report player interface walk is that it was around for a very long time. Years, in fact. And although me and my friend Mahler OSRS banded together and found this on our own, it was also already known even before our time by many other bug abusers. And eventually, this report interface got leaked again and again and again, and therefore patched in the later part of 2020. So because this was known for such a long time, it was actually pretty ironic to see this never being fixed, but other things being fixed instead. For instance, originally, all scrying locations weren't in objects, and you could move freely. And this is what allowed for the Lower the Better episode number 4 in Morytania, whenever I actually traversed over to the Haunted Mine quest start and started the quest all without Priest and Peril. The original scrying locations worked just fine. So instead of actually patching the report player feature, Jagex didn't even know where to look. And they just decided to add every scrying pool into an object instead of into a tile you could move. Because if your player was embedded into an object, you could therefore not actually interface walk to another coordinate and get out of the scry. You would always be returned force teleported because your character would be stuck unless you somehow found a no-clip all while inside of the scry. Luckily, on the exact day of the patch that Jagex put in a news post that they're going to go ahead and put scries into objects, we had 30 minutes to get as many accounts as possible into these areas before it was completely implemented.
Dude, the vampire's standing right in front of me. It's blocking. You see that shit?
You're about to patch a bug, most likely. So we
100%.
going there with all the accounts and just log out.
Okay,
But that would have not even mattered, because months later, new scry locations came out through the Arceus spellbook and portal nexuses. And of course, Jagex completely forgot their entire patch to adding the scry into objects, and instead now, these new locations in the scry were not in objects at all. And these new locations once again included parts of Morytania, Ape Atoll, and even Harmonia Island. And no, none of these new teleports actually put you inside objects like the prior patch had done with the scrying areas before it. So because Jagex failed at looking at their past patches when implementing a very similar update, we were able to go anywhere we wanted practically on any restricted build once again. So that is how I got into Ape Atoll on this account without accepting the training from Darrow. But our story today does not end here. No one yet, I believe, had even done this quest with 1 defense, 1 prayer, and 10 HP. That's because so few of us could actually get onto the island, much less no one would have such a restricted build they wanted to add Addy gloves to. So there were some definite feats within this quest to overcome with such limited stats. The first was, of course, still the requirements. Me getting those monkey bones for each of the Grigris. So what am I going to do? I'll basically be setting up my cannon since I'm a 10 HP build and hide away as a monkey, because monkeys can't attack me while I'm a monkey, right? Well, sort of.
What in the fuck?
So although I did run into some difficulties here, the majority of the process of getting these bones wasn't too bad, and I was able to safe spot almost every other monkey and then just log out hop worlds to deaggress these monkeys and grab those bones off the floor. Now I would just have to go back to Zooknok through the tunnels, but this time I would not need the potato warriors. This is because I already had the original Karamjan Monkey Grigri from Monkey Madness 1, and I could just run through these tunnels without taking any aggression from any NPCs, dealing with only the damage from traps and falling rocks, which is near to nothing. So although this is the largest section of the video, that wraps up all the requirements I had to have for this specific subquest of RFD. And now I could be any goddamn ape I wanted to be. So realistically, the middle portions of this quest are quite uninteresting to say the least. This is because I already had the Grigris and therefore I would take almost no damage throughout the entire island of Ape Atoll. I did the quest as any other account would do it, besides the parts I had to use combat in with my limited stats, and besides the fact that I had to return to Ape Atoll every time through a World 330 house portal and scrying rather than just going the traditional route by traveling through Darrow. So after completing those very easy portions of the quest, I finally came in contact with something extremely difficult. This was killing the big snakes in the snake pit on Crash Island. These snakes for the next several hours would make me hate my life. This was before gravestones, and it is an instanced area, so every time you die, you practically lose everything. Also, these snakes are in multi-combat and attack as soon as you go down.
Killing lately. What about you guys?
Dying 1,000 times trying to do this.
But the worst part is, they all max 14s, and since so many of them are on me, and because I can only Guthix rest to 15 HP, well, let's just say I'm going to be in for a hell of a ride once I go down this hole. So I did a lot of testing on a main prior to even going in this instance at all. I wanted to see if there was a spawn pattern or a very unique position for these snakes to spawn in so I could possibly manipulate the exact direction I run in at the start of this instance. It was hard to tell at first where these snakes spawned because they instantly became aggressive to me. So I utilized an old method upstairs near another snake of fake logging with an elemental shield and 2 interfaces to melee fake log for 10 seconds, then go down into the snake pit and see if these snakes possibly had a static spawn. Unfortunately, they did not, and their spawn every single time seemed completely random. After several hours of testing, I hadn't really found much, other than that these things hit like hell, and by standing next to a wall, you can take poison damage from snakes poking their heads out. But I caught a break by accidentally running over one time to one of the walls and setting up my cannon. Here I could trap the snakes behind each other, since they would all be aggressive to me inside of this instance, and I could walk on top of the snake right in front of me and literally take 0 damage after the initial run to this safe spot. Due to these snakes being fortunately 2x2 tile NPCs and of course not 1x1s. And since the cannon was placed over the middle snake, that means it would never kill that snake and it would only kill the snakes behind it, acting as sort of a safe spot for both me and the cannon. But the problem was still there. I had to get to this spot in the first place, and I could only out-eat barely the max hit of one of these snakes, much less 4 of them attacking me at the same time. And once again, this is instanced, meaning I can't set my cannon up one piece at a time. I have to do the whole thing in one go, or else my cannon just deletes and I have to go back to the dwarf to get a new one every single time. So what did I do to get my cannon finally set up? Just died a hell of a lot of times.
Let's go.
So now I finally had all of my ingredients to make the perfect meal for this ape, and I could use my newly found 65 cooking skill in order to do just that. Fortunately, I got more than one snake corpse on that one time I set up the cannon properly, just in case I might burn those other snakes. And if I had burnt all 3 of these stuffed snakes, well, you could probably find me outside of my apartment throwing my computer into the dumpster. But fortunately, that did not happen, and I finally had completed a quest I thought would have never been possible back when I built this account originally in 2015. And this means I now also had access to my Addy gloves. Or did I? Well, just like the patch we were talking about earlier with Jagex fixing only scries by putting them into objects and not actually patching the core bug being the report abuse button, this thing with Addy gloves was extremely similar. And instead of patching the possibilities of even starting the Kingawagi subquest, Jagex decided to slap a fat, disgusting defense requirement on all Addy gloves across the board of 13 defense. So this account could not even wield the Addy gloves that I went through all this effort to get. But don't worry, we still got one reward, and that was this beautiful skewer in my right hand. So now I am the only 1 defense, 10 HP, and 1 parapeer who can wield this skewer. And you better bet that that is one badass achievement to have. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel to help support me. Whenever I said I'm going to be making a new series soon and Lower the Better episodes in the distant future, I meant that. I've got a lot of clips already and I have many more to add that's going to be something mind-blowing. It's like if I just evolved from Charmander to Charizard overnight, and all of a sudden everything you saw in my past experiences meant almost nothing. And let's just say this video here doesn't even touch the surface. So I hope to see you soon on my next video, and thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day.